Lots of people think that diets are just about losing weight, but that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes, most of the time in fact, diet is all about keeping healthy. Now, when you're talking about what sort of diet you should adopt, there are two factors that you need to take into consideration: your lifestyle and your body mass index, otherwise known as BMI. Now let's talk about lifestyle for a moment. What sort of lifestyle do you lead? Do you lead an active lifestyle? Are you a manual worker? Do you work out at the gym a lot or play sports? Do you walk long distances, or are you on your feet all day? Do you work in a retail store or something like that where you're standing up all day? Or do you lead a passive lifestyle? Do you have a sit-down job? Do you travel everywhere by car? Are you not particularly active at home? Is your hobby playing video games or something like that? Now, when we talk about your BMI, you can work it out very simply. First of all, you divide your weight in kilograms by your height in meters. You then divide that result by your height in meters again, and the result is your BMI, your body mass index. If your BMI is less than 18.5, that means that you're underweight for your height. Between 18.5 and 24.9 is a healthy weight. Between 25 and 29.9 is overweight. And if your BMI is over 30, then you're technically obese. If you're underweight or obese, then you really should see your doctor as soon as possible, because there may be some underlying health issue that's causing it. If you're overweight, then you should adopt a weight loss diet. Now, that falls outside of the remit of this video, but there's plenty of information online about losing weight. Note, though, that this just applies to regular adults, and these figures should not be applied to children or to pregnant women. Okay, what we're going to concentrate on in this video is people who have a healthy weight, whose body mass index is between 18.5 and 24.9. Now, if you lead an active lifestyle, then carbohydrates are the key to good health through clean eating. You see, carbohydrates deliver glucose into your bloodstream for immediate energy, and the rest is stored in muscles as glycogen. And the more glycogen your muscles store, the longer you'll be able to continue being active before you feel tired. Now, high-carb foods include whole grain bread, pasta, cereal, rice, fruit, legumes, and dairy products. Something else that you should do if you lead an active lifestyle is increase protein. Protein is used to repair muscle tissues and to support a healthy immune system. And good sources of protein include lean meat, poultry, fish, egg whites, legumes, tofu, milk, and whey protein. You should also drink plenty of fluids, preferably water. And you want to boost your calcium, vitamin B12 and iron intake. And the easiest way to do that is to take a multivitamin supplement every day. If you lead a passive lifestyle, then obviously you need to change things slightly. People who lead a passive lifestyle require fewer calories and protein each day, but you still need proper nutrition to prevent malnutrition and to avoid gaining excess body weight. So you should eat the same sorts of foods as an active person, but in smaller quantities. And you should reduce your calorific intake. Women who lead a passive lifestyle require fewer calories than men who lead a passive lifestyle. So women should aim to consume 1,800 calories per meal, and men should aim to consume 2,400 calories per meal, and that's according to the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA. Now, a good way to determine exactly how many calories you're eating is to look on this site here, the caloriecounter.com. Now, this is primarily designed for people who want to lose weight, but it can be used for other purposes as well. And what you can do, let's scroll down here a bit, is you can either choose a food group from the drop-down menu here and then do a search by entering the food into this search box here and clicking search, or you can browse through the various categories here. And it can be very interesting to see exactly how many calories are in each particular food. Quite often it's more, quite often it's less than you think you might be getting. Elderly people who lead a passive lifestyle should consume more protein than younger people. And they should consume 1.0 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram, or about 0.45 to 0.55 grams of protein per pound of body weight each day. And that's according to the Journal of the American Geriatric Society. But wherever possible, whether you lead an active or a passive lifestyle, you should eat only fresh foods, preferably organically grown or free range. And you should avoid processed foods because processed foods tend to be high in salt, sugar, and fats. In this video, I want to talk about the 5 dangers that you'll find hidden in processed foods. Now, when I talk about processed foods, let me sort of make 1 or 2 things clear. First of all foods are processed to some extent. After all, you don't go out and buy a cow if you want a steak, and at the very least you'll wash the mud off your potatoes before you cook and eat them. But what I mean by processed foods are things like ready meals, aka TV dinners, fast food, basically anything that comes in a tin packet or a jar. Okay, hidden danger number 1. Processed foods contain lots of artificial ingredients. Now, these include preservatives, and these are chemicals that give food a longer shelf life and prevent it from rotting, so that it can stay there in the store for longer and give the retailer a much better chance of actually selling it. Artificial colorings. Now, these are chemicals used to give food a specific color, and they're often intended to make it seem like something it isn't. Flavorings. These are chemicals to give the food a particular flavor, as above. And texturants, and these are chemicals that give food a particular texture. And let's be honest, none of them are particularly good for you. Danger number 2 is processed foods contain lots of salt, sugar, and trans fats. This stuff will raise your level of cholesterol, and in so doing gives you an increased risk of a heart attack or heart disease. And a lot of them contain high fructose corn syrup, and this is used as a very cheap sweetener. And this may be bad for your metabolism. Hidden danger number 3 are refined carbohydrates. Now, the carbohydrates you find in processed foods are usually refined, simple carbohydrates. And these lead to rapid spikes in blood sugar and insulin levels, and they cause negative health effects. Now, don't be fooled, not all carbohydrates are created equal. Complex carbohydrates found in whole foods are much better for you. Danger number 4 is the fact that many processed foods are made with genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs. Now, in some countries, these are banned, and in other countries, particularly in the US, these are commonplace. Now, GMOs have been linked to infertility, organ damage, gastrointestinal disorders, and cancer. Now, this is a rather contentious subject, and the jury is still out on whether it does or whether it doesn't. But generally, personally, I would say this is something to be avoided. Also, processed foods are loaded with pesticides. In order to effectively grow the GMOs used in processed foods, farmers have to apply pesticides and herbicides, many of which end up in the final product. And finally, hidden danger number 5, and this is perhaps the greatest danger of all, is that processed foods are low in nutrients. And there are many nutrients that are found in whole foods that are not found in processed foods. I'm talking about things like vitamins, minerals, trace elements, and so on. Because, of course, in the processing of the food, a lot of these things get processed out. So the more processed foods you eat, the less of these nutrients you're going to get. So the bottom line, well, stick to clean eating. Consume real food, not processed junk. In this video, I want to talk about the simple secret to weight loss. And when it comes to weight loss, I often think about the late movie director Michael Winner. He directed the Death Wish film starring Charles Bronson, amongst others. And he was also a restaurant critic for a leading Sunday newspaper in the UK. And at one point in his life, when he was in his 60s, he put on a lot of weight, probably eating all those meals in restaurants, I presume. But he managed to shed it very quickly. And somebody asked him, what's the secret to weight loss? And he says, well, there's no secret. Just exercise more and eat less. And he had quite a point. Because as long as you're burning up more calories than you're consuming, your body will begin to use up fat reserves and your weight will go down. So what you want to do is work out how many calories you're consuming during the day and how many calories you're burning up. Now, the first step in this process is to get yourself a notebook and write down everything that you eat every day for a typical week. And when I say everything, I do mean everything, includes snacks as well as meals. And you also want to write down all physical activity that you undertake. So get yourself a pedometer. You can pick them up quite cheaply in sports stores or off the internet, and find out how much walking you do during the course of a typical day. And it's probably more than you think. And you want to look at other activities that you do too, things like bike riding, housework like ironing or vacuuming, sports if you play any sort of sports, even things like typing at your computer. They all burn up calories to a certain extent. And you want to record how many minutes you spend on these activities every day. Then, once you've done that, you want to convert these into calories. Now, there are 2 sites that you want to look at. The first one to determine how many calories you're consuming is this site here, the caloriecounter.com. And what you can do is you can either do a search, you can choose a food group from the drop-down menu and then enter the food here into this search box and click on search, or you can browse through the foods and you can get some surprising amount of information about the foods. Like, for example, let's say I click on baked products. It lists foods by brand name, so you can choose a particular brand if you're eating a particular brand, or you can choose something that's just a general description. So, for example, let's choose one here. Here's Danish pastry. You can see it will tell you the nutrition facts, how many calories per serving, if it's just a 1 ounce serving, say, and it tells you how many fats, how much cholesterol, proteins, vitamins, the whole works. Now, the one that you're going to be most interested in is this one here, calories, 114, and calories from fat, 56. So you want to go through your notes and run every single food that you've eaten during the course of the week through this site and get your total number of calories that you have eaten during the course of the week. The next thing you want to do is come to this site, which is www.health-information/tools-calculators/calories-calculator. And what this does is you can work out exactly how much calories or how many calories you're burning in a particular activity. So first thing you do is enter in your weight. Then you select an activity from the menu here. You can see there's all sorts of things here, general activities, things that you do when you're working out, all sorts of stuff. And you enter in how many minutes during a day that you've performed this activity, and then the site will work it out for you. So then you want to total up your weekly calorific intake. So add up every day for a week and then divide that by 7 so that you get your average daily calorific intake. And then you want to do the same with the number of calories that you've burned. So again, you can get an average for the number of calories that you burn every day for a week. Then you want to subtract the smallest one from the largest one, the smallest figure from the largest figure. Now, normally this is going to be calories out from calories in. And then you're going to look for ways to reverse this. And there are several ways that you can do this actually very simply. The first is to look for lower calorie foods. And if you go through that website where you can see the number of calories that each food contains, you can then work out the lower calorie substitute for foods that you're eating. You want to cut out snacking. Snacking is a big source of putting on extra weight, especially if you snack while you're doing something else, like working at your computer or watching TV or something like that. You want to think about taking more exercise, and you also want to think about taking more efficient exercise, because it could be, if you're working out at the gym but you're still not losing weight, then perhaps you should talk to your personal trainer and see if there is perhaps a more efficient way that you could be doing the exercises that you're doing, or that you could take some other type of exercise. And you can do things like have a piece of fruit for a snack instead of a candy bar or a bag of chips. And you could walk or use public transport instead of driving your car. But don't overdo it. You want to make sure that you're consuming at least the minimum number of calories that you need to stay healthy. And that is 2,500 to 2,700 calories for men, or 2,000 to 2,200 calories for women. And of course, you should see your doctor before beginning any kind of weight loss program, because you want to make sure that there are no underlying health problems that could be exacerbated by starting a weight loss diet. So there you go, the simple secret to weight loss. In this video, I want to talk about the most important meal of your day, and that is the first meal of your day, breakfast. And when you're busy, if you lead a really hectic lifestyle, like, let's face it, most of us do, and when you're pushed for time, it's very easy to skip breakfast or to eat something that's inappropriate. And for many people, breakfast is just a cup of coffee on the go. But a good breakfast is of utmost importance for good health. And really, when you think about it, the clue is in the name, break fast. You're breaking your overnight fast. You've not eaten anything overnight, but your body has been working away, digesting last night's dinner and so on, and of course all your internal organs are working away. So you've been burning up calories overnight. You've effectively been fasting overnight, and now, first thing in the morning, you need to refuel. So let's talk about a few breakfast do's and don'ts. Well, first of all, eat natural foods for your breakfast. There's a lot of things out there that claim to be breakfast foods, processed breakfast cereals, breakfast bars, all that sort of stuff. And they tend to be not particularly good for you. So you want to stick to something that's old-fashioned and healthy for your breakfast, something that's natural. And you want to have something that's high in fiber. And this is important because when you get some fiber into your stomach during the morning, it's going to aid your digestion throughout the day. It's going to stop you getting stomach cramps. It's going to make sure you get regular bowel movements, that sort of thing. And you want something that's high in proteins and complex carbohydrates, because carbohydrates release energy over the course of the day. And you also want to make sure that you get plenty of vitamins, particularly vitamins B and C, because they are good for your health and good for building muscle structure and good for keeping away viruses and that sort of thing. Okay, here's a few don'ts. First of all, don't skip breakfast. It's very important. Make time to have something to eat first thing in the morning. And you shouldn't eat processed foods, like I was just saying, highly processed breakfast cereals, donuts, so-called breakfast bars. They're not generally very healthy for you. They're more designed for convenience, but when it comes to convenience, you sacrifice nutrition. So, quite frankly, the price is just too high, at least in my mind. And it's also not a good idea to have breakfast on the go, grabbing your coffee and your so-called breakfast bar as you walk out the door and eating it while you're sitting behind the wheel of your car while you're stuck in traffic. That's not a good idea because you're going to be stressed. You're going to probably gulp it all down and you give yourself indigestion, amongst other things. So you want to take the time to sit down and have a proper breakfast. Now, this doesn't mean to say that you've got to sit down at your dining table and eat your breakfast. You can sit there on your sofa and have a piece of toast while you're watching breakfast television or listening to the radio or reading the newspaper. But at least do have it as a separate meal, not having your breakfast while you're doing something else. Now, experts recommend that you should have breakfast within 2 hours of waking up. And to stay healthy, your breakfast should provide you with about 20 to 35% of your daily intake of calories. Now, this is quite a complicated subject, and there are lots of different options that you can take, all depending on your own personal preference, your own food likes and dislikes, and that sort of thing. So if you go to Google and type in healthy breakfast recipes, you'll find that there are lots and lots of different ideas that you can get for having a nice, healthy, nutritious, clean-eating breakfast. In this video, I want to explain why seasonal foods are best for you. Now, a lot of this goes back to your inner caveman or inner cave woman. And our bodies have evolved to eat what's available when it's available, Until comparatively recently, there was no way of preserving food for more than a short period of time anyway. You had to eat what was in season because, well, that's all there was. You couldn't have something that was out of season. But of course, now you can eat anything any time. You can have your strawberries at the middle of winter if you want. And food can be preserved for long periods. You can freeze it, you can get it out of a tin, you can have it in a jar, you can keep it for very long periods of time, and so that you can eat it whenever you want to. And out-of-season fruits and vegetables are flown in by air freight from other countries, so you can get your out of season apples in the middle of the spring, or strawberries in the middle of the winter, that sort of thing. And of course, intensive farming and artificial growing conditions have extended the growing season anyway. Lots of salad vegetables in particular are grown under polytunnels, these great big long plastic tunnels that you see in fields, and that can extend the growing season. It can make it start sooner in the spring, and it can extend it into the autumn and the winter as well. So you can get summer and spring foods sooner and later than you would do. But this isn't necessarily a good thing, because you see, nature provides you with what you need for the time of year, with what your body needs to process during the time of year for the different types of conditions that you're going to experience. So, for example, in the winter, you need fats and complex carbohydrates to keep you warm. Now, this isn't as big a deal nowadays when we've got central heating and air conditioning and all sorts of other things to make our modern lives more convenient. But as we go back to you in a caveman and you're in a cave woman, you needed to burn off the fats to keep warm. And your body still craves those sort of things during the winter time. So what are the best foods to eat in winter? Well, really, you want to eat things like root vegetables. We're talking things like carrots, parsnips, that sort of thing, because they're slow growing and they've stored up all the vitamins and the nutrients in the root, and you can eat them during the winter when they're ripe to be eaten. And also cruciferous vegetables. We're talking things like cabbage, broccoli, that sort of thing. And oatmeal. Have some oatmeal for your breakfast instead of a processed breakfast cereal, because you have the slow release carbohydrates that will last out right through into the middle of the afternoon. And also red meat. A lot of the fats and the nutrients in red meat are especially beneficial to you during the wintertime. In the spring, your body needs more proteins to cope with the longer days. As the days start to get longer and you become more active, you're going to need more proteins to build your muscles. So in the spring, the sort of best foods you should eat are things like tender, leafy vegetables. We're talking things like Swiss chard, spinach, romaine lettuce, and that sort of thing. And the seasonal vegetables that sort of come into season in the spring, we're talking things like asparagus, artichokes, new potatoes, etc. And also lean meats, lamb, chicken, and so on. They're just coming into season in the spring, and that's the right time to eat them. In summer, low-calorie foods are best because you don't need to generate heat like you do in the winter. So the best foods to eat in summer are salad vegetables, because they're coming into season then. So things like lettuce, cucumber, etc. And summer fruits, because they're rich in the sort of nutrients that you need. So things like strawberries, blackberries, and that sort of thing. And also lean meats and fish. Although it's best to avoid oily fish in the summer because you simply don't need the fat. You need fats and sugars, though, in the autumn so that you can lay down reserves for winter. So in the autumn, the best foods to eat are warming autumn harvest foods. So we're talking things like carrots, sweet potatoes, onions, and so on. Again, they're just coming into season in the autumn. And seasonal fruits, apples, pears, plums, etc. And also game meats. Now, some people have a problem with eating game meats, others don't. But by game meats, I mean things like venison, game birds, that sort of thing, because this is when they're in season. And venison in particular has lots of nutrients that can really be beneficial in the autumn, and it is just coming into season then. Otherwise, things like red meats, beef, lamb, that sort of thing. You also want to eat oily fish, oily fish like tuna, because you're going to lay down those fats to keep you nice and warm during the winter when you're burning off the fat to keep warm if you're outside doing any sort of activity. Throughout the year, you should be sure to get fresh foods only. Something that's nice and fresh, that doesn't come out of the frozen food aisle, that doesn't come out of a packet or a tin. And free range or organically grown are the best ones to get if possible, because they're going to be free from pesticides and GMOs and that sort of thing. And farmers markets are the best places to shop for seasonal foods, because your farmer will harvest it, take it to market and sell it, usually within a few days of the harvest. So there you go, a brief guide to why you should eat seasonal foods. In this video, I want to talk about clean eating in restaurants. One of life's pleasures, or as far as I'm concerned anyway, is having a nice meal in a restaurant with family and friends. The only trouble is, you never really know what's in the food that you're eating. And restaurant food is intended to be satisfying rather than healthy or nutritious. And of course, eating in restaurants, especially fine dining or silver service restaurants, is as much about having a pleasant experience as satisfying your hunger. And restaurant food often has artificial flavorings, colorings, and saturated fats that are designed to make it more comforting. And short of going into the kitchen and quizzing the chef about what's in the food, which probably wouldn't be appreciated, what can you do? Well, there are a few options. First of all, when you're ordering in a restaurant, ask for the healthy options menu. Now, many restaurants have these, and they're intended for people who have special dietary requirements, people who are diabetic or need a low salt diet, that sort of thing. But they're good for everyone. Now, quite often when you go into a restaurant and they present you with the menu, it's not going to be the healthy options one. It's going to be the one that's got the comforting food, the stuff that they really want to sell. But you have to ask for it in many restaurants. Do you have a healthy options menu? And then they'll go and get it for you. But if they don't have a healthy options menu, then ask how the food is prepared. And don't be afraid to ask them to prepare something differently. If something is fried, for example, ask if you can have it grilled instead. But of course, be sure to leave a decent-sized tip to compensate for their trouble, and it will be very much appreciated. You should also read the menu carefully. And clues to unhealthy options include anything that's fried, au gratin, braised, buttered, creamed, or escalloped, something that comes with a hollandaise, cheese, or a cream sauce, and anything that says that it's in gravy, pan-fried or pan-roasted, rich or in a butter sauce. All these types of things give you a clue to the fact that it might be designed to be comforting rather than healthy. And really, if they don't have a healthy options menu, then stick to something simple. Now, what I mean by that is something like steak or fish without any fancy sauces. Or you could order a salad, but if you do so, get one that doesn't have any dressing on it. And you should also avoid anything fried or containing cheese, because these can be high in saturated fats and simple carbohydrates, and lots of sauces that they have in restaurants come pre-prepared, and so they're factory made and processed and so on. So it's best to avoid those. So something like this fast food cheeseburger is best to be avoided, especially if it comes with a side order of fries. You should also drink alcohol in moderation when you're in a restaurant. and order wine by the glass rather than by the bottle. Unless there's quite a large party of you, then you could split a bottle of wine. But generally, it's best to order wine by the glass because then you're less likely to have more than one glass. Wine is actually preferable to beer when you're dining in a restaurant because beer has lots of simple carbohydrates and processed sugars and that sort of thing, which you generally won't find in wine. You should also drink water with your restaurant meal, even if you order a glass of wine, because the water is going to aid your digestion and it's going to satisfy your thirst, so you're not going to want to order another glass of wine. You can simply drink the water instead. And you should avoid soft drinks. Even so-called diet sodas are full of sugar and cornstarch and artificial colorings and flavorings and all sorts of other stuff that's not particularly good for you, that's not particularly sort of clean eating. Now, when it comes to clean eating in restaurants, desserts probably present the biggest danger, and there's lots of sugars, lots of fat, and all sorts of unhealthy stuff. So order fruit or sorbet instead of triple chocolate fudge sundae with extra whipped cream. And finally, take your after-dinner coffee black rather than cappuccino or latte. And the reason I say this is because lots of restaurants use artificial creamers or so-called whiteners in coffee, and these tend to come laden with all sorts of artificial unhealthy stuff. So if you just simply take your coffee black, then you're doing away with that. And all you're really getting is the coloring and the caffeine and the flavor from the coffee bean and water, and that's about it. So there you go, just a few tips on clean eating in restaurants. Adopting clean eating habits at a young age can reap benefits for a lifetime. Here are some tips for teaching your kids about nutrition. Children get bombarded with advertisements for candy, junk food, and unhealthy snacks every day. And there's also peer pressure to fit in and be just like everybody else. So it's best to establish clean eating habits as young as possible. What you know first comes back soonest, so even if they do rebel as teenagers and stop off at the corner shop on the way to school for breakfast of a sugary donut washed down with a soft drink, they'll soon grow out of the phase and return to eating healthily. Also, if you have a clean eating regime at home, then any damage is likely to be minimal anyway. Now, some of the most important aspects of clean eating are controlling portion sizes and reducing fats. Some ways to reduce fat intake include serving low-fat or non-fat dairy products, skim milk or that sort of thing. Serving poultry without the skin. And I'd also say doing, steaming it or pan cooking it without actually deep frying it, that sort of thing. Also eating lean cuts of meat, lean cuts of beef, lamb, chicken, etc. Having whole grain bread and cereals. Don't eat white processed bread, eat the natural malted grains. And having healthy snacks, healthy snacks such as fruit and vegetables instead of candy or chips. You should also serve modest portions to your children, portions that are appropriate for their age. And something else is don't insist that kids clear their plate. Lots of parents do this. They say, they're starving in Eritrea, so eat up. And insist that they eat everything that's on their plate. Sometimes parents are afraid that their kids are going to become anorexic if they don't eat everything. But the thing is, especially if you serve the right portion for the child's age, they know when they're full. And clearing their plate or insisting that they have to clear their plate gets them into the habit of overeating, and that can have detrimental health effects when they grow up because they think that they've got to be really full and bloated after every meal, which isn't really the way that it should be. But as I was saying earlier, what you know first comes back to you soonest. Something else that you can do is to cut down on sugary soft drinks or eliminate them at home altogether. You know, fizzy water with a slice of lemon or a splash of fruit juice is just as refreshing as some bottled or canned soft drinks. Another thing is don't use junk food as a reward. You often hear parents say things like, if you do well on your exams, we'll go out for a burger. Well, that gives junk food an unwarranted mystique or an unwarranted value. Kids tend to associate it with a reward associated with doing well. So therefore, it's something that has high value. Whereas, in fact, really, it's something that's very bad for them. And you also want to guide your children's choices rather than dictate the sort of foods that they can eat, because that's just going to set you up for problems further down the road. So have a wide variety of healthy foods available at home. And this will get your kids into the habit of making clean food choices because obviously there's not going to be anything else available. They'll have to choose one clean food over another. So leave the dirty choices, things like chips, soft drinks, candy, and so on, off of your shopping list. Something else to do, or something else to don't do, rather, is don't take your kids grocery shopping until they're older or until you've established a clean eating regime at home. You see, supermarkets harness pester power to sell junk food aimed at kids. Supermarkets know that once the kids are old enough to walk around and not be strapped into the seat in the shopping cart, they're going to wander around, they're going to see something that appeals to them in a package that's perfectly designed to appeal to them and grab it off the shelf and, look, Mum, look, Dad, can we have this? And, pester, and eventually a lot of parents give in. So if you don't take them shopping, then that's not going to happen. But when they are old enough or when you've weaned them off of junk food, then take them grocery shopping and show them where the healthy food is. A trip to your local farmer's market can be beneficial at any age, and it can help kids learn where good food really comes from. Growing your own vegetables at home can also help as well if your garden is big enough. You should also have regular meal times so that children get into the habit of having a meal at a regular time. And you should also discourage snacking, especially if they're engaged in another activity like watching TV, because then it's very easy to eat too much. So sit down at the table and eat as a family. And, eating as a family is not just about consuming food. You can catch up on what everybody's doing during the day, that sort of thing. And you can also get your older children to help you with cooking. And not only are you passing on life skills, but you're also teaching them about food, about clean eating, about staying healthy, about making healthy food choices. You also want to make sure that meals outside the home are healthy. And this includes school meals. Now, lots of schools will actually publish the menus that they're going to be serving to the children online so you can check, or they will send a copy home with the kid so that you can see what he or she is going to be eating every day, and you can see that they make sure that they have the healthy option. Of course, if you pack a lunch for your children, then you're going to know exactly what goes into the sandwich, exactly what drink goes into the lunchbox, and that sort of thing. And you also want to make sure that they do actually eat it, that the sandwich doesn't come home uneaten at the end of the day. And then there are meals in restaurants. Kids' menus in restaurants tend to be very unhealthy because they're made to appeal to the children. They're made to be satisfying and that sort of thing. So, if you have, say, 2 children order an adult meal from the healthy options menu and ask for an extra plate and divide it in between the children. And that's a good way of making sure that you don't sort of pander to the sort of sugary, fat-filled stuff that restaurants like to serve to kids because it's appealing. And of course, you should practice what you preach. Don't be a hypocrite. If you want your kids to practice clean eating, then do so yourself. Don't let them catch you eating a candy bar as you drive your car along or anything like that. You want to lead by example. Is alcohol good or bad for you? Well, that's a fairly contentious topic. So let's examine the pros and cons, the good and the bad, in this video. Now, before we go any further, I want to state that certain people shouldn't drink alcohol under any circumstances. And those people include pregnant and breastfeeding women, women at a higher risk of breast cancer, people with family histories of alcohol abuse, children and adolescents, people taking medication that can interact with alcohol, those with health conditions such as liver problems or ulcers, and anyone requiring skill or coordination to perform a task. So if you're going to drive a motor vehicle or operate machinery, you should not drink alcohol at all under any circumstances. Now let's look at the good side of alcohol. Moderate drinking can raise levels of good cholesterol, which helps prevent blood clots, especially those that could lead to a stroke, and it helps keep the blood flowing smoothly throughout your body. And it can improve your libido. Moderate drinking might actually protect against erectile dysfunction in the same way that drinking red wine might benefit heart disease. In a study published in 2009, researchers found that the chances of erectile dysfunction were reduced by 25% to 30% among alcohol drinkers, and that's according to the Journal of Sexual Medicine. And it can lower your risk of type 2 diabetes. Results of a Dutch study showed that healthy adults who drink 1 or 2 glasses per day have a decreased chance of developing type 2 diabetes in comparison to those who don't drink at all. And this is due to alcohol enhancing the uptake of blood sugar by the cells, and that's according to the American Diabetes Association. And it can actually decrease your chances of developing dementia. In a study that included more than 365,000 participants since 1977, and as reported in the journal Neuropsychiatric Disease and Treatment, moderate drinkers were 23% less likely to develop cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. So drink up and stay healthy in that respect. But of course, the other side of the coin, some aspects of alcohol is bad for you. And particularly, alcohol can be addictive. And this can lead to alcoholism in people who have a predisposition to it, and especially if there is a family history of alcoholism. And a study by the University of Chicago rated alcohol at 81 on a scale of 100 for addiction. So it came 81 out of 100 for addiction, and that was higher than heroin, cocaine, or marijuana. Tobacco, incidentally, scored 100 on the scale for addiction. And alcohol can lead to liver disease. In particular, it can lead to a disease called alcoholic fatty liver. And fatty liver develops in 90% of those who drink more than 16 grams, that's about half an ounce, of alcohol per day. And that's according to the National Center for Biotechnology Information. I suppose if you see somebody with a beer gut, it's generally actually a fatty liver. And it can also lead to cirrhosis. Now, cirrhosis is an irreversible and potentially fatal liver condition where your liver just basically stops functioning. And quite often, the only cure for cirrhosis is a liver transplant. And that really doesn't happen all that often. So this is a very, very serious condition. And alcohol abuse is far and away the most likely cause of cirrhosis. And while alcohol may make you feel good in the short term, continued long-term heavy drinking can lead to depression and other mental health issues. And of course, it promotes bad eating habits. Alcohol makes you crave salt, sugar, and fat. And these are just the sorts of foods that you want to avoid as part of a clean eating plan. So drinking lots of alcohol can actually throw your clean eating plan into complete confusion. So the verdict? Well, you decide. While moderate drinking can be beneficial, too much of a good thing can be detrimental. In this video, I want to talk about clean eating for seniors. It's no secret that our bodies change as we get older. Our nutritional needs change too. Older folks aren't as active as younger ones, but that's not the only reason. Our metabolism changes, the way that we process our foods changes. The sort of nutritional needs that we have change as we get older, and the way that our bodies process the nutrients, well, that changes as well. That as you get older, your body isn't as efficient as it used to be when you were young. Now, in some ways, seniors have an advantage over younger people when it comes to clean eating, because processed foods and convenience foods, well, they're a fairly recent innovation. And in their youth, most elderly people ate freshly grown, freshly cooked seasonal foods because, quite frankly, that's all there was. There wasn't anything else. You didn't have the selection years ago that you do today. So returning to this sort of regime, well, it isn't really too difficult. The elderly should eat more proteins, more complex carbohydrates, and lots of other foods that are rich in vitamins and minerals, while avoiding processed foods, fatty foods, or foods with high sugar. And eating in this way ensures that your body runs as efficiently as possible when you get older. It keeps you healthy, and it effectively fights diseases. Because, as I was saying earlier, one of the changes to your body as you get older is the fact that the way that you digest things change. Now, specifically, the sort of foods that they should eat when you get older are fruits like blueberries, raspberries, cherries, and other fruits that are high in antioxidants. Also, dark leafy vegetables, things like spinach, kale, Swiss chard, and so on. And protein-rich foods like eggs and oily fish. And these are a good source of omega-3. And elderly people should eat more proteins than younger people. Now, dairy products are also important as a source of calcium and vitamin D. With age, it gets harder for your body to make vitamin D from sunshine. And of course, elderly people tend to spend more time indoors than younger people, especially in the wintertime, especially because they're not as active as younger people. So taking extra vitamin D is a good idea. And drinking low-fat or semi-skim milk and eating non-processed cheese is a very good way to get this extra vitamin D. Whole grains also become more important as you age. And they're a good source of B vitamins, and B vitamins are good for the brain, good for warding off dementia and other ailments that afflict the elderly. And it also aids digestion as well. And elderly people should stick to lean meats because your digestive system changes with age and you're not really able to digest fat as effectively as you do when you're younger. So we're talking things like lean beef, lamb, lean lamb, chicken, pork, that sort of thing, and should avoid anything that's got lots of fat in it. And also, you should stick to alcohol in moderation. Red wine is better for you than beer when you're elderly. It doesn't have all of the carbohydrates and the sugars that beer has. And also, there are studies that suggest that red wine can be beneficial for your heart as you get older and also can help ward off dementia and other cognitive impairments. And of course, it's best to choose natural, organic, or free-range foods at any age, not just when you're elderly, because these are likely to be free from pesticide residues or GMOs. And your local farmer's market is the best place to shop for clean eating, healthy foods. So there you go, just a few tips on clean eating for seniors. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 clean eating habits that you can adopt right now. And by right now, I mean right now. You could start doing these today and begin reaping the benefits right away. Okay, habit number 1 is always eat breakfast. Now, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Breakfast is probably also the most underrated meal of the day, but it is actually very, very important because a breakfast consisting of foods that are high in vitamins, proteins, and slow-release carbohydrates can keep your energy levels up until lunchtime. And with your energy levels up, you're less likely to crave a sugary, unhealthy snack in the middle of the morning. Now, clean eating breakfast foods include oatmeal, wheat germ, bran, yogurt, fruits and fruit juices, eggs and fish. And you should get a pretty balanced selection of all of those during the course of an average week to make sure that it's spread out and that you get all the benefits all day long. And washing it all down with a cup of tea or coffee, well, that's fine too. You know, a lot of people do benefit from a burst of caffeine to wake them up in the morning. And of course, getting rehydrated after sleeping all night is very beneficial too. Which leads me on to the next subject, which is habit number 2, which is drinking water instead of soft drinks. Now, soft drinks are, awful, really. I mean, soft drinks are full of corn syrup, they're full of processed sugars, and they've got lots of artificial colorings and flavorings, and none of which do you any good. Carbonated spring water with a slice of lemon or a splash of fruit juice can be just as refreshing as a soft drink. Spring water is better than tap water as it's less likely to contain chlorine, fluoride and other additives, and of course it does tend to taste better. In moderate climates like the UK, northern USA and southern Australia, it's recommended that adults drink about 1.2 litres, that's 6 to 8 glasses per day. In hotter tropical climates, one should drink more to avoid becoming dehydrated. Okay, habit number 3 is sit at the table to eat. And this means that you take more notice about what it is that you eat. And you'll eat more slowly, you'll feel full sooner, and you'll be less likely to overeat and therefore put on extra weight. And of course, you're less likely to crave an unhealthy snack than you would be if you were doing some other activity. Lots of people snack while they're watching TV or playing computer games or talking on the phone. And doing some other type of activity while you're eating means that you're not actually paying attention to what you're eating. So there is a tendency to eat something that's unhealthy, eat something that's full of salt or sugar or satisfying in that way, but not particularly healthy for you. And you can also lose track of how much you're eating because you're concentrating on something else. So sitting down and eating with family and friends can also make any meal a social occasion, and it gives you a chance to catch up with what others are doing. But even if you're eating alone, making the effort to eat a proper meal can be beneficial, and you're less likely to rush your food and get indigestion, for example. Habit number 4 is to snack healthily. Now, there's nothing wrong with snacking, but as long as you eat something healthy rather than candy or chips or that sort of thing. So choose fruit instead of candy or chips. They've got plenty of vitamins and there's nothing artificial. And choosing fruit that's in season will give your body the nutrients that it needs for the time of year. And finally, habit number 5 is to shop at your local farmer's market. And it's the best place to shop for clean eating, healthy foods. You want to choose natural, organic, or free-range foods because these are likely to be free from pesticide residues and GMOs, genetically modified organisms. And foods won't have been transported very far, so there's going to be fewer food miles, which is good for the planet. Farmers' markets are springing up all over the place. They're not just in the country. It used to be that you could only find a farmers' market in a provincial market town or somewhere like that. But many of them are being opened in towns and cities too, because people realize that buying produce direct from the farmer at a farmer's market can be beneficial for their health. And of course, it's good for the farmer too. It helps their cash flow. So if you look on the internet, I'm sure you'll be able to find one that's closest to you. So there you go, 5 clean eating habits that you can start adopting right now.